Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and always is with me is Chris. What's up, buddy?
Hello, Zach. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us around the worlds and the interweb. We're so honored again today. It's going to be really exciting. Todd, thank you so much for joining us. We're just really excited and grateful to have you. We're going to have a wonderful experience and learn a tremendous amount.
Certainly. My pleasure.
Yeah, we really are. So, yeah, we're incredibly honored to welcome to the podcast the visual wizard, Todd Marks. He's a veteran in practical playback. He has close to 30 years and 50 films, along with tons of television shows on his resume, including Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Deep Impact, Star Trek Nemesis, The Net, The Internship, Anchorman 2, Quantum Leap, and of course, Star Trek Picard. He is the owner of Images on Screen, which provides, and I quote, a unique mix of technical and creative services for producing and playing back high quality imagery onto computer, video, and projection screens. Images on Screen provided much of the computer playback and projection mapping systems for Star Trek Picard season 2 and 3. So again, Todd, thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see
Sure.
you ever since we met in Vegas, and we are very honored to have you with us.
Thank you. As I said, it's my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to sharing some cool stories and show some nice visuals as well.
Yeah, that'll be great. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube if you're listening to us. And if you are listening to this on the audio side, be sure to go to YouTube and check our channel out there where you can find the video version of this and many other episodes we have. And if you are listening to this, you probably are going to want to see the video version of this to see all the incredible stuff that Todd shares with us from his computer. So, Todd, one of the things we love to do when we have guests on with us is we always like to start out in the beginning. We want to jump back in the way machine and time travel, just like they do in Star Trek and so many other sci-fi shows. So I want to go back to the very beginning. When did this whole thing start of you getting into working in Hollywood and working on productions and things? How did this whole thing come about?
Well, it's a long story, but essentially I did go to a film school program and up in the Bay Area and worked in industrial video and advertising and started, I shot my own videos and stuff like that way back in the early 80s. I moved to LA in 88, went to Cal State Northridge, got a degree in marketing because I figured I already had a degree in film, TV, even though it was an associate arts degree. And I figured, marketing's a good, safe degree because it can work for anything if that whole, my whole film career didn't work out. While I was going to CSUN, I had a computer consulting business that I had started. And through that, met different people. When I graduated, I worked as a PA on a Carol Burnett series called Carol and Company, which was a really cool experience to get to go to the Disney lot every day and meet, we had all sorts of cool guest stars and things like that. Obviously that was not what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to produce, which I still kind of want to do, but the way that I got into this kind of crazy world was I was at a I was at a bookstore with my then girlfriend, now wife, hanging out in the computer section. And some guy just kind of asks a Mac question out loud. And me and this other guy chime in and answer him. And then I start talking to this other guy. And it turns out he's this big time first assistant director, David Sosna. And I get his contact info and start, reaching out to him on a regular basis. And he brings me in and to introduce me to John Badham, the director. And I did some computer stuff for John and his office. And when they were starting the film Point of No Return, Bridget Fonda movie back in 92.
Yeah.
David, instead of hiring, he hired one less PA and hired me instead to help with the computer stuff. Now, I didn't really know that there was this job where somebody, was in charge of doing all the computer stuff for the film, but I did graphics work and I was familiar, I was a big Mac guy. And so was Dave, and so was Badham. And so I got pulled in and started helping and coordinating. And it was a great experience, just being on a feature film set, was awesome. And the about a year after that film came out, John Badham was doing Drop Zone, and they called me in to talk to them about the computer stuff. And so they sent me a script. I did a breakdown. I had a friend who was a graphic designer and did storyboards. So I storyboarded the whole breakdowns of all the different shots of what I thought, would look cool. And so I go into this meeting with John and his assistant. That's what I thought. I walk into this meeting and it's this room full of all sorts of other, like basically all the different department heads. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to need more copies of this because I only brought 2. And so they made more copies. And then I walked them through the whole, here's what I'm thinking and yada, yada, yada. And meeting went really great. And then the next day I was off to San Francisco to go up to Macworld, because the annual San Francisco Macworld conventions, was one of my regular things. And so I was up there. I got a page on my little beeper because that's how long ago it was. And and it's a 213 or a 310 area code. I call them back and they're like, okay, you got the job. And I was like, wow, awesome. So I went basically on the first film from like a computer consultant to a department head in like one movie. And so all of a sudden I was running a department. I wasn't a kid. I was like 30, but still, not having done that before, there was certainly a learning curve, and especially all the paperwork that went along with it for purchase orders and accounting and blah, 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 blah. But it was an awesome experience. We flew off, we shot that in Florida. And again, to show you how long ago it was when we would get the graphics, it was via modem. So, I'd have to go into the production office and download the little animation files and hope, no one picked up the line in the middle of the download. So that was kind of the start of like, wow, this is kind of a cool thing, because it combined a lot of my skill sets of creative coordination, technical, and also, kind of like telling people what to do and that kind of thing, managing, and also getting to have a creative input in the film. So, I always like it to, if somebody is starting off as a camera assistant or in the grip department or, some other department, typically it takes them a very long time for anything that they're doing to actually show up in the film or, in the project. But I was like immediately, designing things, doing storytelling, and adding things to the show by, giving my creative input and coming up with cool stuff, doing product placement, getting cool technical stuff to put in the shows. And so it was kind of like this just perfect match, a mixing of a lot of my skills. So, I just kind of kept going, but it's not an easy career by any means, because, if I worked in like props, I could work on any movie or any television show because there's always props or costumes or whatever. Yeah. But there's not always computer stuff, or not always video stuff, or, things on displays. So it's, I kind of limit myself on, unintentionally by having to choose certain projects that will, need my services. And, on a project like Picard, it was fantastic because, as you can, if you're looking at this on video, you'll see behind me, there's the bridge of the Stargazer. And yeah, I think that's the Stargazer or the Titan. And, we had 40 plus displays and projectors, throughout that. So, just on this one set. So
Yeah, it was perfect. It totally combined like your talents and your skills and your technical talents, and then your love of creativity too. And so in that combination, like, so you say you went to study film school, right?
Yeah,
As
film
well,
and television.
film and television. When you were growing up, like, were there certain films or TV that kind of stood out to you, that integrated with you, that you were like, hey, I want to be a part of that, or I'd like to be like a part of that?
Well, it actually started, I think, in second grade when I probably with the Brady, no, with either the Partridge Family or the Brady Bunch, I think. And I was like, oh, I want to, I want to be an actor. And so I did community theater, and so for many, many years, that's kind of where I thought I was going to get into the business. But it was not until high school when I was working on, as a freshman, I did The Sound of Music, playing Kurt, the youngest son, and there's a lot of singing in that. I was told to mouth the words, so I was not a singer, and that I was throwing off the other singers. So that was not a, not a good thing. And then I also found that the behind the scenes stuff, set construction and things like that, was really, I really enjoyed that, stuff with my hands. So during high school, I kind of went from wanting to act to more of a, kind of a behind the scenes type of guy. But I do still like to do cameos, and there are many, many, many films where you will see me have a little cameo, some more than others. And just kind of on a side note, the Anchorman 2, I'm in quite a few scenes there, in the uh, the TV station there, and I was in some of the trailers and a few other things. I mean, never with a line. I've never gotten a line. I've tried, trust me, but I did get some good screen time in that. I mean, both Miss Congenialities, I did both of those. I'm in both of those. I have a little cameo in the net. I have in what else was it?
Did you have a cameo in The Lost World?
The Lost World, yes. The Lost World, I had quite a good cameo.
Was that in the scene where they're getting ready to go and they have all the trucks around and everything like that?
Yeah, there's like a few scenes that I'm in, but there's like there's an overhead shot. Excuse me. There's an overhead shot of the when they're doing the welding and they're getting all the trucks ready. So I'm like, there's one shot I'm like leaning over something, not a big deal. I do a cross through one thing, not a big deal. But then there's the thing where Jeff Goldblum and his daughter Kelly are having this conversation, and they're walking around this office, and you see me behind them several different times. And then they come and they sit down and they're having a conversation. I walk into the scene in a wide shot. They go to a close up. I walk in again because of the edit. The timing was off a little bit, so my friends always love that. But then I'm like back there during the whole scene, wrapping cables, putting them into a tub. So and then there's a thing where they're like, "Doctor," and so it's like over the intercom, and I look up as though I'm listening. So also to turn to camera. Always a ham. So anyway, but
That's awesome.
Yeah, those are those are fun. I always like to get my little time on camera if I can.
That's great. So, you're working on Star Trek Picard, right?
Yeah.
And have you always been a Star Trek fan? Like, what's your earliest memory of watching Star Trek or becoming a fan of the franchise?
Uh, I've told this story before, but growing up, I had some neighbors who were huge Star Trek fans, back the original series, and it was on rerun. I mean, it was in syndication, and so it would come on every day and after school. And they were so into it that they had a cassette recorder. This was before VCRs, and they would audio record the different episodes so they could listen to them. And I was not that guy, but one of I mean, I would watch it occasionally, but in rerun. And then when Star Trek, the motion picture came out, I was in LA for my drama club class had an annual trip to LA from the Bay Area. And so we saw it, what was it, 1980, I think, when it came out.
Or maybe slightly before.
The
Yeah.
79.
I want to say, I want to say it was late 70s. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was 79. Whatever that year was, we were here. So I saw it at the Man Chinese Theater, and which was so cool. So that was like my first like getting to see it on the big screen. And then again, I've told the story before, but when we did the Picard season 3 premiere, it was in that same theater. So it was such a cool kind of moment to get to relive being in there. It was not in the same seat, but just being in that same place with another Star Trek event. So, it's kind of a cool cyclical thing.
Yeah.
Those are very, very meaningful, to be there to see Star Trek, the motion picture, and then to be there essentially to see something that you helped create.
Yeah.
So meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, and a similar story, not a Star Trek story, but a similar story was when I worked on the Steve Jobs movie, and the first act takes place at Flint Center in Cupertino at De Anza College. So it was at the college that I was going to. It was a recreation of a time when I was actually going there. I was there that year. In that building, we shot in my old film department classrooms, and I also worked there for like 3 or 4 years in the film department as well. So it was such a weird kind of like, here's where I was first learning filmmaking, and now we're back doing a professional film in these same rooms, 20 some odd years later. And I got to bring the department head, who had the person who had started the program, onto the set, and introduce him to the director, and we did a whole thing for the students there. So that was kind of a cool, another one of those kind of like cyclical moments where from the beginning and then coming back, and as a professional, getting to kind of give back and also relive some of the times in those spaces.
Yeah, that has to be really surreal, to
It
go
was
from being there and then coming back, right?
Yeah. And then one of the weirdest things was they had to recreate the part of the set because we didn't finish shooting a scene, or they had to redo it. So they built part of the hallway and the classroom on a stage in South San Francisco. So I would walk into this set, and it was like time travel weirdness, because you're like, okay, I know I'm not in this place, but this is the place that it, so that was another one of those kind of mind benders.
Oh, wow. How beautiful to share that. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I love to be able to hear those memories. So so as you kind of, you're reminiscing about your memories on Star Trek, and because we're called the Random Redshirt podcast, is there a particular series that has stood out to you that's amongst the favorite for you, or do you like all of them?
Well, Next Gen was certainly the one that, when my wife and I were dating, and actually before we were dating, but then, as we watched it. My wife's watched the original series with her dad, and so both her dad and her stepfather are both huge Star Trek fans. So they were both thrilled when I was a part of those. And I also got to work on a little bit of Voyager, especially when at the very end, when they were tearing apart the sets. I was there to help I was brought in by Ben Betts, who was the playback supervisor or playback engineer on that show. And, doing some day playing here and there. And while we were shooting Nemesis, they were doing the Scott Bakula one.
Enterprise. Yeah.
Enterprise. And it was weird. There was like this weird tension where they didn't want the film people to come onto their set. And so it's like, we couldn't, before I was like allowed to go out. And then at some point we got this thing, it was like, the two Star Treks shall not interact with each other. It was very weird. The television and the film, for whatever reason, somebody had a little something that they didn't like. But yeah, I mean, we watched Deep Space Nine, and I mean, not as regularly, but kind of, well, whatever was on and of the Trek eras, during the different Trek eras, we would, watch off and on. But certainly Next Gen, we watched a lot more of. And so getting to do Nemesis back in 2001 was a really cool experience, to get to do that film. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great movie story-wise, but my stuff still looks good. And we pushed a lot of boundaries as far as the visuals. So I'm still proud of what we did on that show. And then obviously, getting to come back all those years later, 20 years later, and improve upon everything that we had kind of done there by leaps and bounds, and to also be able to do a lot of the stuff practically that we used to have to do in post. And so, when we get into the picture section here, I'll show some of the technological breakthroughs, or the things that we got to do, now that we couldn't do back then.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second, Todd, if we can,
Sure.
to Jurassic Park: The Lost World. I mean, as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, the Jurassic Park was a massive franchise. It still is, with all, with the Jurassic World franchise and everything now. And visually, what you guys did in those early movies was incredible. I'm curious, you worked with Steven Spielberg, right, on The Lost World, and he's obviously probably one of the greatest directors of all time, and the work that he's done as a display graphics supervisor on Jurassic Park: The Lost World. What types of things did you learn, if anything, from Steven Spielberg that maybe you brought from that project into future projects?
Learn from Spielberg. That's a good question. A lot of his composition, the way that he lays out shots, and I mean, I'm not directing, so it's a little different as far as that goes. I mean, I brought in a lot of stuff that he liked. He was very impressed with the types of things that we were able to do for them. But it was such a cool experience to obviously get to work with Spielberg. It was such a cool experience to get to work with all the dinosaurs and,
Oh, yeah.
And I have a bunch of behind the scenes videos, which I've shot and put up on YouTube. Great stuff of Spielberg directing one of the baby dinosaurs. There's like a picture of it, but I was the only one who actually got video of it. And I have a whole thing of the T-Rexes when they're smashing through the windows on the motorhome, and some of the other cool stuff. So one of the benefits of being the video guy is getting to have a video camera and shoot stuff, because back then, you always get these things, no personal photography, no blah, blah, blah. And especially there's certain shows that they're really like very, very concerned. And I was like, well, we're shooting video for the surveillance stuff for the motorhome. I need stock footage of the trees or the this or the that we can have going as though they have security cameras up
Mm.
or surveillance cameras. So that's, and once they start seeing you have a camera on set, then it's not as big of a deal. So early on, I was shooting, 8mm video. I have great videos of behind the scenes stuff on the net, and I have stuff, and a ton of stuff from the Lost World, and several other projects. And then it, went from 8mm high 8 to DV, so I have all these different little formatted videos. But getting back to the Lost World, we shot that initially. We shot that up on location, up in Northern California, outside of Eureka. So it was supposed to be Costa Rica, I think.
Yeah.
So we had a shirt that said, not Costa Rica, close to Eureka. And yeah, it was, we flew on this little propeller airplane to some little airport up north, and then got trucked in, vanned in, whatever, to the location up in the redwoods. That was such an amazing experience. And as I said, I have some really great behind the scenes footage. And then one of the things that happened, though, was while we were there, it started raining. And so the guys are out trekking through the stuff, that they have their GPS, which I had to build. The Marksman GPS. Marks is my last name. Man is the guys who did our graphic stuff. So that way I didn't have to clear anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And and I'd found this little device that took a video input signal, a little color LCD monitor. And so going back to 8mm video, we fed a video cable up the arm of the actor into the device. And then, and I made it look like a GPS because, back then there were no color GPSs. So when we were on location, they were not really, they had it out in their hand, but they weren't using it. For the inserts of, like, when they're trying to track Sarah, those we did back when we got back to LA. But anyway, let me get back to the other story. So when we were there, it was raining, and Stephen liked the look of that. So when we got back to Universal, he decided, hey, let's have it rain on the stage.
Like in the first movie, all the rain.
Yeah. So small problem. The motorhomes, very expensive thing with very expensive equipment inside, the $40,000 or $50,000 electronic microscope,
Wow.
all my monitors and stuff like that. Those were not sealed for the rain. So we had some leak issues.
Oh.
And also the stages were not prepared in advance for water. So we had lots of mud, which then went through and ruined the floors of a bunch of stages, which they then had to redo this, that stuff happens. But also the T-Rexes were not initially designed to be soaking wet. And
was
so
that Stan Winston's team still that did the dinosaurs on Lost World?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had tests, which I have video of when it's pouring rain, and just to see how they'll respond. And they were concerned because those things were really quite massive and hydraulic and very, very strong. They were like, stand away because we don't know what they're going to do. So we could, the tail could whip out, or so there was a lot of stuff that you kind of had to just adjust and go on the fly. And one of the other issues was there was a shot where again, in the rain, which was not initially prepared for, they kept having a problem with the lenses of the cameras fogging up because of the moisture, in the air. And so they had to come up with like, there's like the spinning lens thing that throws the water off. So they have to have the camera in this box, a sealed box with a spinning thing so that they can shoot through without drips on the lens. So, there's just those kinds of things. So, I mean, as far as learning stuff from Steven, I just learned that, if there's something you want, and you have the power to make it happen, you make it happen, and everybody else has to adapt. It was a very interesting film though, because Steven was, part of the time his son was, having his bar mitzvah. And so he had to leave for a while, and we had to do, we set up, a very, very, very expensive satellite truck so that he could watch in New York live. This was before, you could do this on anything else.
Right.
At $1,000 an hour or whatever the hell it was.
Wow.
And then there would be all the chairs, usually you have like Video Village where everybody's watching the monitors. So there was a monitor with Steven at his New York apartment, and then the monitor, a camera on everybody, so he could talk to whoever was directing or, in charge of a particular scene. So he was supposed to be gone a week. I think he ended up only being gone like 2 or 3 days because it was not working out to have him away to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a gazillion stories. I could do a whole thing on just the Lost World. But
were those big dinosaurs, those big T-Rexes, I would imagine, like in person with how big those things were, those had to be kind of intimidating. It's almost like seeing real dinosaurs, right? I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. Yes. They're big and powerful. And one of the guys who worked for Winston back then became a friend of mine, and he was the one who did the eyes. And so one time he handed me the controller, and I got to make it look around and do the iris and blink, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. So yeah, I mean, there was just so many cool experiences on that project. Another one of my favorite stories is when we were shooting at Universal, and it was a break between, there were setups. And so Steven and Jeff Goldblum go outside, and I think they're like leaning against one of the carts talking. And I just happened to like walk outside just as one of the trams pulls right by them, and people lose their shit because it's like, oh my God, it's Steven Spielberg and Jeff Goldblum. And we were literally like just across from the Jurassic Park ride. So like we'd walk out of our stage and we would hear the music. But that was such a cool experience I can just imagine, you're on this tram and all of a sudden you see, these famous people right across from the Jurassic Park ride. So that was kind of cool to get to experience that.
Yeah. The backlot tour.
Yeah.
At Universal, right? Yeah.
And the current show that I've been doing, which is Quantum Leap, is also on the Universal lot. So it's kind of fun to be back there and drive by. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where we shot that part. And oh yeah, that's where we shot that part. And so.
This is fascinating, that your story on Jurassic World, on Lost World, because aside from the planning, which I'm sure you do like a tremendous amount of planning, but you describe this environment where you're constantly problem solving, you're constantly adapting, right, to the circumstance and the scenarios. That's amazing.
Most film sets, unless they're very, very, very precisely run, there's a lot of figuring stuff out and, stuff on the fly. You think about, you get a schedule typically at the beginning of the shoot, and in the Lost World, we didn't have a third act when we started shooting the movie. So that's a very unusual thing. So that makes it hard to plan everything when you don't even know what the ending of the movie is going to be. But nonetheless, yes, there's always a lot of juggling of, just imagine, you have, it's literally like an army of different people. You go to a location, so you need a location scout to, organize to everybody, they bring different choices to the production team. They pick a spot, they go, they scout it. Yeah, this is where we're going to shoot. Figure out the assistant directors, ADs have to figure out where in the schedule we can do that. Oh, when can those actors be available for that particular thing? Oh, that guy's off in London that week, so we have to get him. We can only get him on these 3 days. Okay, we can only get that location on this particular day, and and then you have to get everybody there. And where are we going to park the trucks? Where's people going to eat? Where are they going to put the bathrooms? Where's hair and makeup going? Where's all the, blah, 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 blah. And then, oh, this guy gets sick. Okay, we got to reschedule it, okay, shift everything around. What can we do today instead? I've been on plenty of shows like that where you're like, oh shit, we got to punt because whatever we were planning to do just fell through, or a location. Just a few months ago on Quantum Leap, we were supposed to shoot. They had planned to have, they had got a bus and they were going to drive it down Forest Lawn Boulevard to do some shots where they had people inside, and then they were going to shoot, outside to, like a location thing as the bus is driving. The morning that we were supposed to do that, we get there, Forest Lawn is shut down. The city is doing 2 days of cleanup, and they're getting rid of they're towing all the old motorhomes that people are living in. So it's like, oh shit, what are we gonna? So they had to scramble and figure out a whole other thing to do, or so that's a very common thing, is you just have to think on your feet. When I did the movie Team America, the one with the puppets, that was another one that was just, you never knew what was going to happen, especially towards the end when we were shooting. We were shooting at a warehouse in Culver City that was subdivided into like 4 or 5 different sections by giant curtains. And you'd walk through a curtain and you're like, oh, I'm in Cairo. And you walk through another curtain, you're like, oh, I'm in some other place. And oh, there's team base. And my office was on stage, and we'd be preparing to do some shot, and then somebody would run in and say, oh, they're blowing up the Panama Canal. We'd run over and watch that, or oh no, we're going to do this instead of that, or can you get this ready for that? So it's a job that you gotta just be able to kind of roll with the punches, and you got to be able to kind of really have your A game up as very often, because if you don't want to be the one who screws something up for the rest of everybody, because it's an expensive thing, and kind of getting into that thought process of not screwing it up. What I do typically on a set is very, very technical. So we have a lot of potential room for errors. Everything from a graphic isn't quite right, or there's a name misspelled, or something. Sometimes, most of the time those are easy to get fixed. But then there's the times where we've built an entire working television studio, and all of a sudden there's roll bars coming through 3 different or 4 different things, or something goes off, and I have to, almost always right before they're about to roll. Okay, ready, 3, 2, wait, hold on, and then you have to stop everything. And, the assistant director comes over and it's like, okay, what's the problem? They're like, well, we're not sure. This is not working. Okay, how much time you need? Well, I don't know. How much time? 5 minutes. Let me just see what's. Okay, then 5 minutes later. Okay, how is it fixed? No. how much time? I don't know. Should I send the actors back to their trailer? Give me 3 more minutes. You don't want to be, I've been in plenty of those situations. It really sucks. It's a lot of pressure, especially when you have a lot of high-priced actors on a set.
Yeah.
And you think about, this is what, $10,000 a minute? I mean, how much am I costing or more, for bigger shows, that those productions are burning because something of yours isn't working. It's not necessarily our fault. And especially in technical things, it's like, I always give the example where I'm like, imagine you're doing a presentation for your company and your laptop doesn't work. Oh no, there's 6 people who are going to have to, or 10 people or whatever, you're going to have to hold them off for a second while you figure it out. Okay, imagine that on a movie set where there's 30 extras or 50 extras and all these high-priced actors and all these other things. You're on a particular location. Okay, now that's kind of what I have to deal with. So
yeah, that would be pretty nerve-wracking. You almost kind of have to be a Scotty, right? A little bit of a miracle worker, right, to get some of that stuff done. I'm curious, Todd, have you kind of taken up the idea as you've gone throughout your career, as you mentioned this stuff, of being someone who under promises but over delivers, to keep maybe expectations to where they're not so sky high? They're like, well, you said this is going to be this, this, and this. You're like, yeah, but there's all this technical stuff involved. And I'm curious as to how that's kind of played out in your career.
It really more the thing I do is try to have 3 ways to do anything technical, because especially when you're going out to a location with some unknown television or something that we have to hook up that somebody rented from some place, and I've been in this situation plenty of times where I get hired to just go, put a feed on a computer or a television, and you get out there and it's like, oh, this doesn't have the right adapter. They're like, well, you don't have that? I'm like, well, it should have come from the, so you're like, okay, from now on, I'm bringing 17 different adapters. And and I'm going to we can run it off a Mac Mini. We can run it off this thing. We can run it off that thing. So now on my sets, I have basically another full set of computers ready to go. And, in most cases where, just we have a whole stack of Mac Minis. Okay, that one's not working. Rip it out, put in the other one, 3 minutes, let's get it back up and running. Especially on shows like this, on Picard and where I have huge control rooms full of stuff. We just got to be ready. And then Quantum Leap, I learned a lot of lessons on Picard, which now we've then took on to Quantum Leap, simplified some of the ways that we were doing some things that were giving us problems on Picard, and have had far fewer problems. I mean, it's a much smaller set, but it's like, okay, this works, but this has been a little bit of an issue. So for example, we used to run everything from we'd have all our Macs in our control room and then run the cables out to the monitors. But that there's like 13 different failure points that you have there. So I'm like, okay, now let's just put the Mac Minis behind there. We'll just put a network cable. We can remote control them, use Apple remote desktop, yada, yada, yada. And so now it's much simpler. So, and again, if it's like, oh, it's not responding, whatever, okay, we can go to this, much quicker to figure out what's going on. And again, when I get into the pictures, I'll show you some of the behind the scenes of, kind of what our control room looked like on Picard. And so you can kind of see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You want to get into the pictures? That'd be
sure. Why don't we do
yeah.
that? All right. So you guys are seeing that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the Stargazer, which was our first full ship that we built, which took a very long time to design and build. And I actually have, I'm not going to get into it here, but I have like from like the very early on pictures of them putting in the steel and the decking and all the other stuff the 6 to 8 months that it took to get to this point. But what you're seeing here is, and I will point, let me see here. So we have, all right, you see that little blue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So on this bridge, we had two of these upright consoles, as we like to call them. We had other consoles inside of the wall here. There was another one you're not seeing from this angle. There's two up front in the base of the viewing screen. We had our other things here. We had projection here, rear projection here, and more and more and more. So, and Allison standing, getting her hair done over there. Yeah, so you can see kind of like what it was like on set. You can see all the atmospherics, and this was pretty early on in the
Was this early on in season 2?
Yeah, this
Okay.
was, I believe, yeah, very early because yeah, yes, it was. Although we shot it at the end of season 2, it was for 201 and also 210.
Gotcha.
And you can see here, this is the COVID tray for the masks for all the actors, because that was the era we were living in. So we have the upright consoles, and I'm going to play some video here just so you get a feel for these. So those were fully animated. There's the console and the I was talking about, and then here's the transparent OLED displays, and there's the viewing or the one of the Helms consoles, and you can see here on the left, this is actually a backlit transparency, which they never quite got right with the matching of our screen.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been the backlit transparency. That would have been similar to like what they use on TNG. Obviously,
Correct.
Better tech, but similar.
Yes. And you can also see here this screen is an LCD screen. It's a special wide, ultra wide viewing screen. But it's very narrow. So it's a specialty screen for digital signage. Unfortunately, the LCDs are nowhere near as good as OLEDs. So we were able to use OLEDs in a lot more of the show. If I go back here, so all the screens so all these up here, all the top ones, it's kind of ugly, but those are all rear projection. So that's a specialty rear projection material, anti-reflective, made by Screen Innovations, and it's a material that I found out about when I was working on the show Venom.
Yeah,
and it's a curvable. It's a flexible, it's not like soft flexible, but it's like a 1/4 inch or a little more than a 1/4 inch acrylic. So you can bend it, and it's not cheap, but it's really amazing stuff. You can't shine a light directly at it, but you do, you can see a little bit of the light here because they're kind of blasting it with light. But down below, other way. There we go. Nope.
And these are that's curved, right? Up high.
Yes, they're
curved?
double curved, and I'll show you more pictures to show you what that's like. Then down here, these are there's two 48-inch OLEDs, 4K OLEDs, and then this is a special 32-inch OLED and another one here.
Todd, could you, sorry to interrupt you. Could you explain really quickly what's special about the OLED screens? I know
Sure.
you can buy OLED screens for like your house, right? Like your TV,
Yes.
OLED TV. What makes the tech so special about these screens?
Well, they're organic light emitting diode. That's what OLED stands for.
Oh, I know what
And
that means.
and the difference is an LCD is basically a panel, and then it has a backlight behind it. And so to get black levels, you're shining light through the panel, so it's never really very black. Whereas these, they're organically done, and so there's no light source other than the actual little cell that lights up. It's a chemical reaction essentially. So when the right current is applied, it glows whatever color that pixel should be. And they've just gotten better and better and better. And the black levels are just phenomenal. They look great off angle. They don't shift. I mean, it's a teeny little bit of a shift, but very, compared to an LCD, when you go off angle, they often kind of blow out or get weird colors. So initially, when I did this set, I had found LG had an 88-inch ultra-wide display that was what I thought was high resolution. So those were about $9,000 a piece. I bought for the show. We bought 3 of them. I get them into the set, and they look awful. So there was a bit of a panic because they were not designed. They're really great displays, but they were not designed to be put at an angle like this, looked at basically kind of whatever this 15-degree angle is. So and those are LCDs, not OLEDs. And so they kind of milked out a little bit, and the resolution also wasn't nearly what I needed. So very fortunately, 2 48-inch LG OLEDs are exactly the same size as this 88-inch ultra wide. So, and I could go to, basically to Best Buy and buy these monitors for, like $1,400 or $1,500 instead of $9,000. So luckily, I was able to reuse those other displays, the big expensive ones, in other places. We used them really all over the show. But I ended up having to buy a bunch of 48-inch displays. And then LG came out just in the nick of time with these 32-inch OLEDs, because initially I had 32-inch LCDs. And once I put the OLEDs in, the LCDs look like crap. And I was like, okay, I need, and so I reached out to my LG contacts, and they got us 4 of them. But it took a while, and nearly every day, the art department people are asking me, when are those coming in? When are those coming in? When are those coming in? And we get them into set, we turn it on, and we're like, oh, it looks awesome. And we put a camera on it, and it flickers, and we're like, oh shit, that's not good.
Yeah.
So I call up our rep, and he's like, hold on, let me get you in touch with the product manager. And I reached the guy. He was on his vacation. He was on a beach. He's like, okay, there's a setting for 48 hertz. You have to do this. You hold this button in, enable this, and then it'll work. And it worked. And we were like, oh God, because that would have been real.
Yeah,
that was another one of those kind of horribly anxiety producing times, because we had to get all this equipment in and make it work. There was all sorts of concern about these screens because they wanted to shine a bunch of light on them, and I'm like, no, these are projection. You can't put light directly on it. Anyway, so there's not only is there tension during filming, it's everything leading up to it. All right, so let me.
And I'm so glad you were talking about the vendors and the manufacturers, because I was totally wondering on that, like how much is custom for you, or are you taking things that are the manufacturers already have standard built and then adapting it? Because there's so much of it is like what is available.
Yeah.
Like just looking at that console, like what dictates the design of that console, like even the dimensions. Are you
Well, the material, I mean, this is again one of those things where they one of our designers designed this curved console very early on, in the midst of a variety of other designs, because the original design was a bunch of different screens up here, and I had like mocked that up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have a 48 inch or 52 inch here, and a blah 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 here, and a blah 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 there. And then he came up with this gorgeous curved design. I went, hey, I think I can do that with flex glass. So then we built. I contacted my rep at Screen Innovations and ordered a 10-foot piece of the material, worked with our construction department to build this console, that this wood console that we could slide the piece in, and then they could kind of adjust the angle. And then, but it was open in the back, so I could use projection. So we did some projection tests, and initially it was like, oh my God, this looks amazing for the top part. The problem was the bottom in the curve was so sharp, I couldn't get anything on the bottom that would look good.
Yeah.
And especially close up, because you're projecting through a material. So it's never really super sharp compared to like an OLED. So this design was a lot of different kind of tweaks, and, having to like, okay, well, we can't do this, so let's do this. So there's a lot of kind of R&D that went into this.
Yeah.
In the midst of, trying to, okay, well, we're shooting this starting, on this day, so you got to get this working. And not to mention the design of all the graphics and making things line up. You have a double curve and two weird double curves on the side, trying to project something from behind and have it line up all the way across. So like you see the red line going from one side, in the middle here, you can see the little red.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So to get that straight and aligned, and every edge lined up, required a tremendous effort from both my engineering technicians and our graphics design team, and the designers were not on set. They were back east. And so, we're like doing zooms and showing them, look, this pixel's off by, look, this is bent here, taking pictures, shooting video. So there was a lot of design stuff. And then also, initially just coming up with a cohesive design that made sense. So there was a lot of effort that went into that whole thing about, my logic of it was the bottom is all the controls, because that's when we're going to get the close-ups of the hands on the console controlling things. That's going to be down here. That's why having 4K, HD or 4K OLEDs that, they can shoot a hand close up and it's going to look phenomenal, versus up here where, you're seeing this bigger stuff that's not quite as sharp, but it's a little further away from camera. So it'll be okay. Also, we want to make it so that these graphics on the top are large enough so that whoever's sitting in the middle of the bridge, that's for them to see as well. So the stuff on the bottom controls, the stuff on the top more display. So that was kind of the logic of how this all came into being. And then as far, again, back to the lineup of things, there was a lot of stuff that had to be done, a lot of meetings, a lot of back and forth. So yeah, there was a lot going on. All right, so let me.
So we had Liz Klukowski on with us, and I know you worked pretty closely with her,
Yeah.
right, on season 3 of Picard, and even season 2. So, how was that dynamic? I mean, was there certain deadlines that were set for what she needed to have done on the sets, and then those things that he met and so forth?
Well, Liz was one of the most hands-on art directors, because not only like she didn't stop when the set was done. She was there for graphic stuff. So she wasn't involved in the bridges here, but sick bay, engineering stuff in engineering, and I have pictures later. I'll show you some of the stuff that she was involved in.
Yeah,
and
the
so she would
bridge and all that too.
Yeah, and So there was a lot. We worked together a lot. And I loved working with her. And then she got me hired on Quantum Leap. So that was great. So we're now trying to find another project to do together. So
That's awesome.
So again, also one of the other great things that we got to use a lot of were these TOLEDs, transparent OLEDs. And this was something that back in the day, we used to have to do this as a visual effect. We couldn't do this as a practical thing. So on the movie Date Night, there's a thing we do with Mark Wahlberg where he's got 3 screens and he's doing this whole interactive thing. That was all done. We designed all those graphics in post. I was there on set to kind of show him, you do this over here, you move your hand over here, you do this. But then we had time to, go in and build it all later. Here, we're doing it all in advance so the actors can see it and, and they can shoot through it. Now, these displays on one side look phenomenal. On the back side, you have about a 10 to 15% of the opacity. So you can mostly see through it. You see a little bit, it's more like a shadowy version of this image. So what I had proposed, because I had gotten one of these early on to test, there are 6 cables that come off the bottom of the glass. And because this is basically a piece of glass with the OLED laminated to it. So it's like having a screen laminated to the thing. And then there's connection points all on the bottom. So, and then there's 6 10-foot cables that run off and go into a control box. So we had to design this console to support all of that. And also it twists, does a 180 so we can cheat it to camera. So whichever side they're shooting on, I can rotate the thing and it looks good from that side. There's so much engineering that went into this whole thing. And there, our effects guys used 3D printers to print out parts for the base. And we had all the cables coming down the legs out back to our control room. We had about an 8-foot tether that was underneath the stage so that they could like spin this whole unit around, cheat it over for certain shots. And then we ended up building 6 of these consoles. So we had 4 on stage.
Wow.
And 2 over on our other stage where we did engineering or the transporter room or some of the other rooms, and then also sick bay.
You are constantly like integrating the newest technology like you can, because the transparent OLEDs are relatively new.
They've been out for a number of years, but we had the newer model. Let's see.
Look how beautiful that is. I mean, you see the curvature of the screens, and the graphics look just so beautiful on them.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's amazing. Chris, we've talked about this before though, right? Like it's amazing the type of technology that Star Trek kind of predicted years and years and years ago, and how I feel like technology in some ways is starting to catch up in certain things with Star Trek and just science fiction movies in general. What you're seeing now in today's world would have been such sci-fi futury stuff as early as 20 years ago.
It was magic. I mean, and I've been doing this as a very long time. So being able to do this kind of thing on set practically is amazing. And just the sets look so cool. I just loved being on this stage, other than the constant technical headache we had to deal with. Yeah. So here you can see just a little bit of the behind the scenes, and you can see the curvature of those, just the center screen, and then also a little off to the side. So each one of these had a different projector. The center one had a 12K laser projector. The 2 side ones had 9K laser projectors. We worked with Epson and their engineers to have them help us pick the right lenses, because for this type of, normally for projecting on a flat surface and having in focus is kind of a straightforward thing. When you start adding a little bit of a curve, you have a larger focal plane, and normally in order to help with that, you move the projector further away. So the further back your lensing is, you have a larger focal plane. Here we had the problem of a small stage, and I had these curved consoles on both sides of the stage. So I had to figure out what lensing, what angle we could get these, and then whatever tweaks we could make. Our projection engineer, Rick, went into the nitty-gritty detail specs of the Epson settings to kind of tweak things, because you can kind of go a little bit of pixel mapping, and normal projection mapping would not work in this case, because that was our initial idea. But the problem is, when you start doing projection mapping and you're warping things, you lose the crispness of your imagery. So we really had to project as is, we couldn't do too much of the tweaking of the pixels in software. We could do it a little bit in the hardware, the software, the hardware for the software, or the software for the hardware rather, but not downstream in regular projection mapping software. Sorry if I'm getting too technical here, but
no, we love the technical stuff. It's awesome.
But but then working with our designers, our graphics designers, animators, they had to see how things laid out and then figure out kind of how to shift things so that it presented properly on the screen and aligned properly. And the thing was, as I said, we had two different sets of these consoles, on opposite sides of the bridge. So if you look behind me, there's one on each side, in the center. The problem was when they mounted the projection, one problem was when they mounted the projection mounts, on one side, they were up against the wall of the stage and literally mounted on the side of the stage. The other side, they were hanging on chains. They were not equidistant. So I couldn't take what was on one side and move it to the other, because it was complete. They were all unique. All 6 screens were uniquely tweaked to their actual image, to the actual piece of plexi and the distance. So, we'd have directors go, "Oh, can you just put that over there?" And we're like, "No, not easily." We can have our designers, put a piece of the animation over there, do a window on top, but it's not a you can't just go switchy. And also just the stage itself, there's a wide shot there you can see as well. So you can see all 3 projectors on that side. Let's see. Okay. Anyway, I'll get into a little bit more details of that when we go into the control room, so I can show you some of the other stuff. So
but this is magnificent. You're describing you're working with the LG engine, or the Epson engineers,
Epson,
and LG. I mean, do you ever and you're talking about their product capabilities and what they can do. Have you ever observed or experienced, you're creating this work of art. Are the engineers from Epson or LG seeing what you guys are doing and going,
we have LG. We have a great relationship with LG. I mean, they're now sending me products to use in shows, because when I was at NAB, National Association of Broadcasting convention this last year, I brought my iPad with all my pictures from Star Trek and from Quantum Leap. And Quantum Leap that entire set is LG screens. And I'm like, it's a freaking LG commercial, guys. And, and they're introducing me to here's the product manager, here's the transparent OLED manager from Korea, and here's this person, and I've worked with all different divisions at LG, because it's some of the stuff is commercial stuff, some of it's digital signage, some of it's consumer, some of it's business stuff. So there's like all these little subdivisions. So I have to like, oh, those projectors come from this department and this. So yeah, I know a lot of people there. Epson, they were great to work with. We, one of their engineers, their support guys came out to our set to help us, with some issues and give us advice on some of the stuff. Yeah, they love, this type of thing. And this is one of the things I've been doing for pretty much my entire career, is getting companies to send me stuff or give me discounts or whatever, in exchange for using their products on camera, and if possible to show a logo. I mean, obviously in Star Trek, I can't show an LG or an Epson logo, but I did do, publications. I sent you guys copies of those, the PR pieces, which are great. It talks about their product, talks about the show. So it's, it's a nice cross promotional thing. I mean, back when I did Star Trek Nemesis, I got Belden, which makes the big 5-wire cables that we used. They gave us 9,000 feet of wire, which
that had to be expensive if you
that
had
was
bought
very
it.
expensive, which we used to wire all the video stuff. And, we sent them pictures, but, more importantly, the rep got to come to set and get a tour, and his boss got to come to set and take a tour. So sometimes, that works really well. Back when I did Miss Congeniality, for the pageant, I did product placement on almost every piece of video equipment in the pageant, from projection, the cameras, the lenses, the video switching stuff, monitors. I think the only thing, there was like a crane or a jib arm, which I had to rent, and like one other thing, but almost everything else, I got companies, there they got to see their logo and come to set and stuff like that, and meet Sandra Bullock. So that was a big, plus for them.
Yeah, I'm a huge Sandra Bullock fan.
Yes, I've done 5 movies with Sandra, and I also, my computer consulting, we used to do all her office stuff for many, many, many years, and her home computer stuff too. So yeah, I've known her for quite a long time.
My wife knows she is like one of my biggest Hollywood crushes. I love Sandra Bullock. And my wife knows, so if she were to watch this, which she's not, she would know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I understand. So anyway, let me move on, because there's lots to show. Oh, so just remember this here. So this is basically one display, which we then break up with a bezel, and then do little, animations that fit into each one of these little things. This is a technique I've used for many, many, many years. And it's a way to, you can do interesting shapes of displays, but just use an off-the-shelf monitor.
What generates the animations?
Well, they're connected to computers. I mean, they're all just monitors that we build. Our graphics guys build they get a picture of the template. They give us a test grid that we put up. We take a picture of that so they can see, like, okay, these are the pixels that are on, and like we do the same with like iPads for, because every Star Trek thing, you're not going to just hand them an iPad. You have to put a funky bezel on it to change the shape a little bit, or some alien, display can't just be a rectangle. It can't look like you just went down to Best Buy and bought it, because so you have to kind of camouflage it into something else. So I've done that for a very, very long time. And so again, we did that same technique here. All right, let me clear that drawing and that. And then of course we have our turbo lifts. So these little side pieces are just backlit transparencies. The center is what's called an open frame OLED. So it's a flexible OLED that has an armature on it. So you actually get it to whatever curve shape you want and you tighten all these little screws on the back, and then it locks it to that shape.
Wow.
And the beauty is just how gorgeous they are. Hey, there's a ladder in there.
Where'd that come from? That's not Trek.
So this again was another thing that I got from LG. And these were just gorgeous to have when we had
They're
two
beautiful.
Yeah,
they're beautiful.
There's another wide shot. There's even a wider shot. And then in our observation lounge, you can see here in our table, we had two 48-inch OLEDs. So again, this was a place that I had originally was going to put one of those 88-inch ultra wides. Did not work well. Swapped it out for the two 48s, and they worked really well because we can make them really bright and they could shoot. You could shoot them off angle and they'd still pop. And then in the background is an 83-inch, and you can see the old Trek bezel here to make it look not like a television.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there were some big scenes filmed in that conference briefing room.
yes, in the observation lounge. So
Yep.
there's one right there. So one of the cool things I got to do as well was originally they wanted to see if we could shoot out the back of they wanted to see the actual ship behind, the rest of the ship as it's flying through space. So we had talked about building like a scale miniature. And then I was like, well, yeah, and then, beyond the miniature, I can do some screens to give you the flying effect. So the scale miniature eventually went out the window. Originally, you saw much more of the ship, but they never got it to the place. The VFX company that was doing it didn't have enough time to really, I don't know the actual reason, but they never got it to look appropriate. So, but this is all my projection. So I had found this specialty black rear projection material in Italy. It's actually cheaper to fly it in from Italy than to buy something similar in the United States.
Wow.
So this was a 45-foot, 24 by 45-foot rear projection screen. And we had a triple stack of 15,000 lumen projectors. And it worked really, really well. There's the nebula, because I could get pieces from the visual effects company and then supplement it. So here's where I used my projection mapping software. So for example, here you see, there's a little movement there. This is when they're in the space junkyard, and there's all this debris floating around, spinning around slowly. So I worked with, and they were like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to get that done." I'm like, "Okay." So I found one of our other animators, Trek animators. I was like, "Oh, can you get me, a bunch of the like abandoned ships, build a bunch of abandoned ships, and just have them slowly rotating, doing 360s." So we did that, and I was able to layer them, scale them, put them at different distances, different speeds, different angles, and make it look like they were in a space junkyard, practically, and save them a ton of money from having to do that in post.
Todd, this is a little bit. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and not doing it in post, doing it right there. It's just such more of an immersive experience.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Being there. It's like you feel like you're there. You're
Right.
seeing it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see here, this is actually outside of the back of the set. And so on the bottom, there's my laptop running Mad Mapper, which was the software we used. And you can see the screen. So the screen was actually on little white, we had white stretchy cords that would hold it down, because it was the stage was raised up, and so you didn't see below this 12-foot lip here. And the rest of it was actually on almost like a curtain thing. So because the stage, this right here was the elephant door, which is the big door you need to open to get into the stage to move stuff in and out. And because this was the space that they had to use, like when they brought in cranes and other equipment, we had to pull the screen back. And so it was all literally just kind of on a giant curtain rod, a curtain system. So it could pull back or pull tight. And the thing that I was always trying to get lights not to shine on it, because it made it a little milky. So that was always a bit of an issue. Same with those side consoles that I showed you earlier. Those need absolute black behind them, or they milk out a little bit. So we had black curtains that we constantly were having to fight to keep closed and keep people out of there with lights and stuff like that. Anyway, so that was another thing that we did. And they loved, they saw this and they were like, oh, can we do this in the front of the ship? And I was like, there's not enough room here. We just barely had enough room. And you can see the triple light stack, the triple projectors there, the triple beam there, which was then combined. Because it was such a short distance, we had to use very wide lenses. But we were, the math just worked. We just were able to kind of fill that screen.
Todd, have you found from projects in the past where you had to add special effects and things in post-production versus stuff now with technology? Have you found, or have you had actors that have made comments about how much they actually enjoy seeing the effects versus having to pretend they see them on screens?
Oh yeah. I mean, the difference is fantastic. In fact, we actually had Patrick Stewart comment where you had a scene where he is like launching torpedoes or something from one of the little consoles, which is an iPad. And he actually got to do stuff where it actually, he was actually able to interact with it and it did things. And he's like, I never get to do this, where it actually did something when he was using it. So that was kind of a fun moment because, and actually I have video of it on, I shot from behind the scenes, because it was, he was kind of tickled to get to do something that actually did something. Yeah, and it's always better. I mean, I always find it, the crew, I mean, the actors like it. It's much more of a instead of having to imagine something, it's actually right there.
Yeah, it's immersive for them, I would think.
Yeah, and it's better for the director, it's better for the actor, it's better for the editors, it's better for the visual effects guys. I mean, the visual effects guys love me when I am able to do stuff practically, even if they have to go in and tweak it a little bit later, just to have it there initially.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to do a bit of a time slip as far as, when something happened or whatever, but, or they have to supplement, something else. There were times though, there were times when we did have to put up green here because there was nothing, there was no content ready. So getting back to the beginning, earlier when I was talking about out the front, not only was the problem, there wasn't enough room to project, there also wasn't, in 99% of the cases, they didn't know what they were going to put there yet. So even if I had a screen, I mean, I could have done stars or something, but for most of the time that you're looking out, it's for something specific. And we actually got a quote from a vendor on building a video wall, actual LED wall, 50 some odd feet in front, to wrap around the front of the viewing console. And it was going to be a little over $100,000 per episode.
Per episode?
Per episode.
Wow. But that was a hard no.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the main issue was the content. what's the Star Trek like series? The
Orville.
Orville. So the
Yeah.
Orville on their first season had a video wall.
Mm.
Almost everything that they did on that video wall never got used and had to be replaced.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it was either wrong or they didn't like it, or so it was a very, very expensive thing that they did there that they ended up kind of regretting. And that's often what we find with these giant video walls is if you don't have the material, what's the point of it? So here's one of the corridors. You can see the carpeting down there, which they put down for the walk and talk, so you don't get the little clompity clomp of the actor.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It wasn't all gloss, Chris. There was some carpet.
Yeah, the carpets kind of come and go. You can see they're on.
Yeah, no, that makes
there.
sense. Yeah, from a sound perspective.
Yeah, there's me doing a little cameo there with the, and there's me and my team. So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, that is.
So on, let's see, we'll go from left to right. So in the kind of salmon colored shirt or pink shirt, that's Larry Markhart. Larry and I have worked together off and on for nearly 30 years. And he was recently working with me again on Quantum Leap. Next to him is Peter. Peter was my assistant on the show and also helped with coordinating some of the graphics. And then Ben Betts, also a longtime Star Trek video engineer. Both Larry and Ben have worked on a lot of Trek in the past. So they were part of my team from the old school team. And there's next to Ben is Rick Kahn, who we brought on for projection specialty and engineering, and then Andrew Miller on the right, who was our rookie video engineer, but really learned a lot. And I had him on with me the last 2 seasons of Quantum Leap. So he stayed working with me once I moved on to that other show.
So Ben Betts, you said he'd worked on one of the shows he worked on was Voyager or Enterprise?
Yeah, he did. He did Voyager, he did Enterprise, he did a bunch of the films. So he worked very closely with like Mike Akuda and Denise Akuda. Denise was a playback coordinator, and Ben was like the lead engineer. And when we did Nemesis, he was doing the other shows. We brought him in to kind of engineer some of the some of our playback systems. We've worked, I brought him in when we did Anchorman 2. Ben's got a very large archive of equipment of all eras of equipment. So Ben's worked with me on the Steve Jobs movie. We used a lot of his gear. And then also, as I said, on Anchorman 2, all that, the old TV stuff. And then on Quantum Leap recently, I was telling you guys earlier, I did like the old Steve Jobs garage thing. And so when we did the movie, we used some of his stuff. And then recently on an episode of Quantum Leap, we did something similar. And so, we got those old monitors from the late 70s in there, working. So there's that. Let's see what else we got here. So here is this is one of our this was our control display in our playback room. So you can see all the different images that are going out to the set. And this was during the Borg takeover, and you can see the glitches happening in real time that we could control with our software. And it's basically like a layer that we can add. So with the control, so Andrew's there, like he's watching the live feed, and you know, like every time he hits a particular button, the glitch layer comes up over certain monitors. So each animation that had the glitch layer, the Borg glitch, that was a separate animation built into that particular animation, that when you hit that key command, it would kind of key over, layer over the other animation.
So he was doing that live, like during the
Yeah.
filming. It was just, you know, every so often he'd change up things. And
Yeah, he's hitting the whatever the V button or whatever it is, and it brings up that thing. And so that way, you know, if the director's like, oh, can you make it happen less often, or can you make it more frenetic? You know, we're able to control that all in real time. And then also we can change the opacity of and the intensity of that glitch layer, among many other factors that we you know, can control. So there's kind of another view of our control room. On the left there, you can see all our rows of Mac Minis, and then the main control. And I think I have a close up here. Let me see. Here's another. Yeah, this is that same set. So you can see we're watching the live feeds from the set, you know, from the camera feeds, so that we can make sure that, one, our stuff looks good. We can adjust the brightness, contrast, color temperature, and also the animation. So it's a tremendous amount of control that we're, you know, because we have to make it visually appropriate story-wise, and also visually appropriate to match the scene. You know, you can't have it blow out, you can't have it too dark, you can't have it the wrong color temperature so it looks weird. So these are all factors that we're doing on every shot. And you know, you have 3 or 4 cameras, or 3 cameras in this case, and so you got to make sure it's looking good on everything. Just that and hit.
I just gotta say, this is awesome. This is so cool.
I love seeing so much of this stuff that you guys put all this time and energy and effort into to make that magic come out on screen, right? Something that, to the untrained eye or somebody who isn't learning this stuff, you wouldn't even know. You would have no idea until you're actually seeing this and learning this from you, Todd. It's fantastic.
Thank you. So you can see, so yeah, that's a combination of 2 different glitch effects. So you have not only the Borg layer, but then you can also see there's also another effect we can do. There's an effects layer that's built into the Twisted Media. That's our graphics company that we use. They have different effects that they allow you to, you know, layer into with a key command. And then there's sliders, so you can adjust how much of a glitch or a blink or a fritz or a snow or whatever the effect is. So we would often have to, like, if like one thing wasn't quite right, you know, we're there tweaking often, you know, in between setups, because you're like, well, that wasn't quite enough. I mean, hopefully you've already got it figured out so it's consistent from one shot to the next, but sometimes you have to make changes. So so here's a close up of the screen, and you can see here on the left is the script, and they have the little sign here, little indicators just for their own notes, so that they can see, you know, oh, this is when a particular action beat happens. And then you can see here on your right, each one of these lines, you can see so like this says mini, let me change the color since we're already blue here. So this, I'll just highlight one of these here. So that says Mini 11, and then it has which queue it's on, if it's paused or if it's playing. There's other, you know, that it's on the network. which block. So there's like, you can have different sets, so you can like cluster or group certain screens. So if you can see some of those have the green, they have different numbers, some are grayed out. So the gray ones we're not controlling, they're just looping without getting like that layer effect over them. So we can just selectively choose which ones we want a particular either trigger, where it cues from one beat to the next, or you want that overlay or the glitch. So it's a really, really powerful tool. You can see here, I'm not sure if you can read it on your screen, but it says overlay. So it's got a color, and then the effects here. So, and each mini has its own player, and then this is the main controller. So you load the software onto each of the individual minis, and it runs on each mini, but then there's another master control that's triggering or controlling, what it's doing. If nothing's happening, and it'll just loop in whatever queue. Let's say you're in Q1, it'll continue to loop in that until you hit the next queue, and it'll jump. So, for example, if we want all of them to be running, and then there's a hit, and they all go to no power or whatever, that's like the next queue in the animation lineup. And so you just basically you cue it to the next beat, and then they all go, or they flash whatever, power out or whatever the beat is. So we've had various types of software over the years to do similar things, but this is one that just does it all. And it's just, and I'm only showing you, it's really just scratching the surface of what this can do. But this is the main thing that, just gives us so much control, and so quick to be able to change things and to change the timing of different cues, because, they'll say, oh, can you make this happen and then this happen, but cut out this other part. And so we can actually edit out a piece of the video or the animation, so it cues differently.
There's almost like an aspect of this, like some of the work here, it's like this symphonic quality. You've got the script, you've got the script there, the actors are there, you're live, you're actively controlling the effects that are happening on the set right there for the actors to react to.
Right. And this is the last phase. I mean, this is the last piece, because you have to remember that, it starts with us getting an outline for a script, and then a script, and then there's a breakdown, and every beat and every action and every screen has to be figured out what's going to happen there for a particular line. And it's not like, a normal set where you might have 8 screens. Here we had like 37 different animations, and Red Alert is completely different than, and then just normal state. And then this Red Alert might be different than that Red Alert. So they're like, every single one has to have a new animation built for it for that episode or that scene. So it's a lot. And, we would get this stuff. The animators were, the time frame for this stuff was never enough.
Yeah.
Especially going from season 2 to season 3, because we really had there was no break. We had no hiatus. So we literally went from the Stargazer to the Titan in a handful of days. Had to rebuild all new animation, even though it was technically it was the same ship, but it had to look different. Yeah. And there were additional devices. We added more displays. We added 2 rear transparent consoles. We added displays, 2 sets of iPad displays, and plus we had 3 other sets that were also starting. It was nuts. And then get into the finale 2 episodes that were just nuts. Anyway,
Yeah.
so here's the back of our little
Huh.
stack there of our rack. So you can see just a few cables, few adapters.
Yeah, I was gonna
A couple.
say, Todd, with all the different screens and stuff across the sets, you guys, the amount of cabling you guys had to lay and run would just have been mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was a lot. And and some things were 4K and some things, it is, so you had to break everything out of the different Mac Minis. And we were just starting, we had bought the M1s because they had recently come out, and some of them would like time out partially through the day and get these, lose control, and you'd have to reboot them. Other ones were very touchy with 4K output, and it didn't like certain things, and it had the handshakes didn't always work. And it's very easy to you reach back there and you knock something, and all of a sudden it's not working properly, and you're like, gosh. Initially we also had a bunch of equipment like smoke, like burn up, and we were like, what the hell? It was like, are we on some kind of Native American burial ground here? It was just bizarre. We had a lot of weird technical stuff that we had to go through. All right.
That looks like the med bay.
Yes. So here, again, 3 different 48-inch displays, all with different bezels to give them a unique look. So again, you have to kind of account for that. This one, they didn't really do a great job of fitting the bezel, the graphic to the bezel on. I think this was an early one, because you can see that it was kind of cut off in the center, and it didn't fill the edges properly on the other ones. So I probably had sent this to them going, guys, this needs to shift over a little bit. So, there's a disconnect sometimes, especially when they're not in the same state that they can't, they don't have the stuff in front of them to necessarily see how it's going to look. Here's another one of our transparent OLEDs. That was the something, I forget which set that was. But this room was used. This was the transporter room. It was this engineering thing. It was like 4 or 5 different sets happened in this one room. Liz was in charge of this, so she had a lot of work to deal with that. So you can see, like, in the this panel here lifted out, and there was like a hole right here so that we could get our cables up out of the floor, and then they made a different panel that had a little like separation. I don't think it was here. It was like maybe here. And so that we could fit cables through when we were doing different sets that had the upright console in it. Okay. Date. Okay, I did that. All right. And then here we have the Shrike. So the 88-inch screens that I was telling you about earlier. So there's one of the 88-inch screens. So you can see it's a little milky, but in this set, it didn't really matter all that much. Here are the those ultra-wide screens that you saw also on the bridge of the Titan and Stargazer. Here's an iPad, another iPad.
I was gonna say that the milkiness, I mean, it kind of fits the vibe of that ship anyway. So
right. And then this part is a backlit transparency. Yeah. But there we go. There's an overhead view. And then you see the little iPads. Oops. There. And there's one of the 88s in a different configuration.
Wow.
So that way and that way. All right, we can jump ahead a little bit to this is Metalis or District 6.
Metalis Prime or whatever it was.
Yes. So this was actually this is a Blue Cloud studios in Santa Clarita, up in the mountains of Santa Clarita. So this is an exterior set that normally works like a Middle Eastern desert town, some military things. So we dressed it up. And then what I did is they dressed all the bottom and I did projection mapping on the tops of all the buildings. And then also added some other animation. So we made it into basically like a real-time Blade Runner type set with all that projection. But you barely see, for all the effort that we went through, you see it kind of in the distance in a few shots and you see some things, but it looked really cool. Yeah, there's a little loop. That's very Blade Runner-y.
Yeah,
it definitely had, Chris, I was going to say, when I watched this episode, we talked about it. It definitely had a Blade Runner feel, which I know you're a massive Blade Runner fan. So,
yeah,
that is very
Blade Runner is
cool.
one of my favorites. So, you can see here, that's actually rear projection. Just a little extra detail. It was supposed to be like a vending machine. And so that's, one screen and then broken up into 9 different little screens.
Hmm.
There's another angle. So you can see this little guy on the left with the horns. That's a piece of flex glass that we built into a frame. The black box is hiding the projector.
Ah, okay.
But you never see it from this angle. This is the behind it. And then this large, the green alien woman we had a 30,000 lumen projector in the window of this building, shining out onto the other building, and then at a weird angle. And I had to kind of use the projection mapping stuff to make it look straight. But that was kind of cool. Let's see. Jumping ahead here to the
Frontier Day. That looks like the
Frontier
finale.
Day. So this is where we had 5. Terry Metalis came up. We kept hearing these rumors like Terry wants to do a thing with like 5 of the upright consoles, and we're like, because 4 of them were on our stage at on the bridge of the Titan, and 2 were down at the mill. They're about a mile apart, roughly. So we had about what was supposed to be, I think, 2 days or 3 days to finish shooting up on the Titan and then come pack them up, move them down here. Turned into 1 day. We had to, and these are very delicate things. So you can see not only you have the transparent OLED, but in the touch part is one of those ultra wide thin Samsung screens that we see quite a lot throughout the show. Below this, just so you understand, below the monitor is the control box for the transparent display, and then underneath that are some fans, and then a little converter box to convert Cat5 into HDMI, because we couldn't run long HDMI. We had to run Cat5 video from our room up the leg to a box that broke it out into, and you needed 2 of them because we had 2 different video signals. We had one for the front console and one for the upright console, or displays. So times 5. So there were 2 in each, so we had 10 different feeds. Actually, I'm sorry, this was a bit of a cheat. There was 5 different feeds, and then I think we shared the same feed for all the flat control pieces, because those were never going to change. So I think that was our one cheat on this set. And let's see if this is here's a little bit of a,
wow,
as we were rehearsing.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
And you guys controlled all the animations on these too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, they had to trigger the right time. So I don't remember if we set them or if they were built that way. They might have been built that way, but we also have the ability to have like a little bit of a delay or, like a slight offset. So when you trigger, they trigger the right
Like a
order.
cascade effect or something.
Yeah. Then of course we had, I know I'm jumping around a lot here, but this is just kind of how I had things laid out. In the at the very when they're in the Borg cube, and Riker and Worf come up to the homing beacon display. This was something that I kind of came up with and engineered, and with construction's help, we built, and it was basically a three-dimensional display.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, to do that practically was kind of a cool effect here. I think I had one more video here. There you go. There's that. So this was kind of a, oops, that was kind of a cool effect. So this essentially was like one of those infinity mirror boxes. I'm sure you've seen those with the LEDs, but instead of like a ring of LEDs, we took one of the transparent OLEDs and faced it inwards. So you're looking through the back of one of the transparent OLEDs. So the image is shining into the box. And then I had additional mirrored boxes. So there's a mirrored cube here, and so it's three-dimensional. It's like a three-dimensional cube, but one side is open. So the open side is facing the front. So whatever's shining into it, you see into the inside of the cube reflecting, but it's also a 50-50, so you also see through it. And then down below was another one. And this one had a little bit of a chromatic color shift effect. Now you're looking through the back. So oops, I better turn on the annotate. So up here is what you're seeing is the transparent OLED facing you. Okay. Here is the mirror cube right there. And then the other mirror cube. And again, you're seeing the back of them. So they're turned sideways with their open front facing the OLED like this. You look. So so the box, so you're reflecting into the box. So when you look into it, you see the depth, and it gives you an illusion of 3D. And then there's, mirrored like 50, it's actually 70-30 or 60-40. I don't remember, whatever it was. Specialty mirrors so that, it reflects, but also it has a certain level of transparency. Really freaking cool. It was a big power struggle with Dave Blass and I over this, because he wanted to do something with like this little LED cube with all these little LEDs in the inside. And I'm like, there's nothing there. There's no story there. This, here we're going to build an animation, then it's going to show them where to go. And so we had to do it his way initially. It didn't look good. Then we did mine. And then he came up and he's like, okay, you were right. But it was towards the end, and we were just trying to get stuff done. But I was like, I worked really hard to make this thing work, and it just looked so cool. And I did like all these tests and showed the powers that be along the way, and they were very, kind of excited about it. So and then that's
a great picture.
Set. Thank you. So this is another cool thing that I got to do for the end of this series, where when Jack and Picard are in the Borg Queen's mind. Um, instead of doing it purely as a post visual effect, we did it almost all practical. There's a little post sweetening here and there for some of the shots. Here's Peter standing there. This was our kind of proof of concept. So that's rear projection with a combination of a front projection mesh that we're projecting onto. So this is one we did as a test day. On a test day, one of the DPs had asked me to, he's like, can we do this thing? And I'm like, yeah, I think we can. So that's how it looked.
Yeah, and there's what it really looks like in real life with the two of them
Yeah.
standing there. That's awesome.
So you can see on Patrick's face, you can see the green. So we had a smaller projector. Let me see if I have a shot of that. Where is that? Yeah, there you go. So you can see here, we're projecting onto some diffusion so that you get the light, the green effect as though they're in the, so you have interactive light.
Yeah.
See this is a projection mesh it's called Nebula screen from Rosebrand. So that's designed to allow you to see through it, but project onto it. So you can see there as the effect. So we had I think I had a 20K projector on a scissor lift pointing down at a very extreme angle so that the light, you can see the light on the floor there so that it doesn't hit them in the face, because if I was just shooting it straight across, it would go through and hit them, they would have those red things on their face. We didn't want that. So you come up at a very raking angle and shoot downwards. So it comes down the screen and then it falls on the floor below where the actors are. So there's your camera guy watching on his phone. Okay. So just to destroy a little of the magic of how it all happened.
No, it's not destroying the magic. It's helping show the magic. Oh, there's Patrick waiting to go on.
Yeah. And then there's Patrick and Larry, but both with their bald heads. So go back to the highlights. And let's see if there's okay. Yeah, here's a little of the inside of the transparent OLED display.
Oh, wow.
Upright console. So you can see this black box is the controller. And then the Samsung display has to fit on that. And we have to fit like 6 of these 10-foot cables down into this. It has to like squeeze around the housing, the control box, just to get everything in and lay flat. And then there's a piece of glass that goes over and it's got a black bezel to hide the edges of the display.
And you got to do that every single time you want to set one of those up multiple
No.
times.
They're once they're built. For the first time, but
yeah,
then
that's what I mean. Yeah, the first time. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see there what's kind of the normal.
Yeah.
Look of
It's
it.
crazy how it goes from that one image where it's just a bunch of cables and a box and stuff to looking like that. It's just it's unbelievable.
And then you can see like here the decal sterile field control unit. So we had to change those decals when we moved them into different rooms.
Oh, gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, because they're different. They're different displays now.
What's that?
They're different displays now, right? So they got to be labeled differently.
Sometimes it's it's in the it's on the ship, or it's in on the bridge, or it's over in sick bay, or it's in the transporter room. So they all have different decals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see here now it says, so here it says sterile field control unit. Here it says EPS control hue. So different decal.
Yeah.
One of those little fine details that we had. Liz was, a lot of this was Liz's area. So she was always babysitting those things.
Makes sense. She had a lot of stories for us about, all the work she would do with the builders and, all of you folks doing these different pieces and having to bring everything together. And
yeah, this was one of her, the Helios was one of her first sets.
Mm.
And there were some learning curves about material, like plexiglass and shiny plexiglass, and not, and all sorts of other stuff, like to go over, like there was a piece of plexi that went over the two iPads, but they used initially was like too thin, so it would jiggle. And then, there was, you're trying to match different, this is the center one's just backlit. This is these two are iPads. This is another, these are one of those ultra wide displays. There's two of those edge to edge. Then there's, these little button panels. So trying to get all that stuff to look good together. And then we had our upright consoles here. Different upright console than the transparent ones. Then here's again, there's two of the 88-inch displays making their appearance. So again, I use those, and also in 10 forward, you see those behind the bar is one of those 88-inch displays.
And how many of those? Oh, sorry. How many of those 88-inch displays did you have? Or did you just move them from set to set?
We had 3, and they moved from set to set.
Yeah.
Initially you saw it in Girardi's lab. Let's see if I have that in season 2. Girardi's lab. So initially, these are the different upright consoles. These are with the transparent OLEDs built into those type. But yeah, back in the corner, let's see if there it is. There's one of the 88s in that thing. So this is the thing from Nemesis, that when they were initially putting data together, this was in engineering. So these are my cables hanging out of it from the year 2001 that were still in it, because, we couldn't get them out. However, they, these video cables from these VGA video cables from back then. So it was weird seeing this thing again after all those years. This whole upright thing. I think it was in Japan in some lockup somewhere for I don't remember. They had to like ship it out, and then we used it in several different episodes in different ways. Yeah, here it was redressed again with and you can see, is that it, or is it here? No, I think it was this one with data. So yeah, this was a Daystrom Institute. So here was another set that we did. And so we got these curved displays for something that we ended up not using. So we built them into these little consoles here. And these also had iPads in them. There was a lot of stuff that was done, that there was a lot of busy work for this episode. I think they skipped through some of that in the actual episode. We built more animation elements than they actually used. Yeah, you can see on the top here's a little iPad. And we had these displays in the doorway. And then of course the infamous, I think there was all the different doors had the different animations.
Oh yeah, all the Easter eggs that everybody was. I remember, Chris, when we did our recap and review of that episode, all the Easter eggs we were talking about with Jenny. It was crazy how many awesome ones there were.
Project Genesis is in there somewhere.
And Kirk's body.
Yeah.
So I'm curious on that Todd. Was it Terry's idea to have all those Easter eggs across the different doors, or who did that?
I think it was a combination of Dave Blass and maybe Terry. I mean, I think they talked about, what they were going to see.
Yeah.
And then, this was Kit's set. So he was involved in all that as well. So it took, we did experimenting. And again, one of the ultra wide screens, these things are everywhere. These Samsung screens, you see
You guys
them.
got your money's worth out of them, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Well, we bought a lot of these things. I mean, they had a handful from season 1 that we got, and then we bought more. And then you have to remember also, we were doing this during the whole COVID thing. And so there was a lot of equipment that was hard to get. And there was like, when we were buying our projectors, there was all sorts of delays, and we were trying to get stuff. We're like, guys, we're shooting this in, a week or whatever, it's like, we need this stuff, and they like, sometimes we had stuff kind of get moved up the line so that, we kind of got put ahead so that we could get our equipment so we could shoot stuff. But these things, Samsung like changed the product during the season 2. And so the first batch that we had were slightly different sizes than the second batch we got. And so it's like, sometimes you'd get them and you'd like try to put them in, and you're like, shit, this just doesn't fit, because it was like just a little bit wider, a little bit shorter. So good times. Let's see. Let me just, as long as we're here, let me just show you a little of the Quantum Leap stuff, just to show you a little of the kind of some similarities, differences.
It's your handiwork, Todd.
Yeah. So, we kind of, Tim Stepek was the set designer on season 2 of Picard, not 3, but Tim was the set decorator on Quantum Leap. And so he's like, what if we use those same kind of consoles, the uprights that we did? I'm like, yeah, we can change them a little bit. And so we built 2 of these, and they have little teeny wheels, and they love them on Quantum Leap. And we would have to move them back and forth across the set, because camera guys always wanted the light, the cool little blinky lights behind people. And so we ended up, thankfully for season 2, we were able to build another set of these upright consoles. Let's see, what else so you can see the difference in money and time from Picard and here. In Picard, we built those gorgeous rotating. I didn't really show you the pictures of how it worked, but that they rotated. Here, we didn't have the money, so they have 2 little feet. They have a little well here. We have the cables, and then we end up we have to like back them up. 2 guys, lift them out, rotate them, pop them back in, pop in this little cover, and so that we can flip them one way or another on set. Here we did another like OLED in the table. Instead of 248s, we did 165-inch. But again, transparent OLEDs. So we have 3 of them. Here's just as an example of, sometimes we do, as every episode's a different year. So here we did a set that was a 1980 something battleship. And so, I had to basically make it use CRTs or build LCDs to make them look like CRTs, the old tube things.
Yep.
So this is a lot of, older 24 frame stuff. much lower resolution graphics.
Yeah, but it looks spot on. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
just like you would have seen him back in the 80s.
Right. So that was, that's part of what I have to do on Quantum Leap is every, I might have 1994, I might have 1981, or I might have whatever, and it's got to like, okay, what did things look like in that year? What equipment was appropriate? So that's the big challenge on that show. Because, we have our one standing set, which is the headquarters set, and then everything else is different every episode. So
yeah, that's crazy.
So that's that. And then let's just, for a moment here, let me just show you, because we never really talked about like the beginning. How do we get to the point where we're already ready for the graphics,
yeah,
on the set? So as I mentioned, we have, all right. So this is for season 3, episode 1 on Picard. And so these breakdowns are done by Casey Felt, who is our graphics coordinator, who works for Twisted Media. And they're the ones who have the control software, and then they also do the animation for us. And over the years, I've used different companies. I've done it myself. As much as I can, I like to help design things. I like to help give my input on how things should look, how things should work, how they tell a story. But I do not miss doing breakdowns and spending all the hours doing all the hard work of the design stuff. I like to, help with it, but not all the other work is better to have somebody a better designer. Anyway, so let's go through this. So we get a script. Casey will do a breakdown in this case. So we see, I'll annotate here for you. So scene 3, this is the cherry version. So each time there's a new draft of the script, a different color, you go through different color things, different orders of color. So you'll get different colored pages that you're supposed to, in the old days when we actually had physical scripts, you would put, it's like, oh, page 7 is different. It's a cherry color, and page 15 is different, and page 22 is different. So you go through your script and your binder and you just replace certain pages. So by the end of by the time you were about to start shooting, usually you'd have like this rainbow of colors in your script.
Yeah, all the revisions of the scripts.
Yes, thank you. And then we have the one-liner, which is the breakdown, the schedule. So as we go through different schedules, we have different colors for that. So here we go. Interior, large cabin, simultaneously. That's the setting. And we're on the Helios wall screen. Okay, crew member sleeps in the background. As we pass a screen displaying a list of old captain's logs. One quietly. Okay, so breaks down kind of what it's supposed to be. It's the shoot day, the playback, the time frame, because we were also doing especially in season 2, we were jumping around in time a lot.
Yeah.
And then if there's specifics of what it's playing on, an iPad Air. Okay. So that way they know what resolution, then, we'll get into what's the orientation, is there a bezel, yada, yada, yada. So what we do is Casey will do a breakdown. In this case, we will have a meeting with production, a Zoom, typically with the director, production designer, the assistant director, and a handful of other producers and a bunch of other people. And we'll go through all the beats. We'll get, what it is that they're looking for. We'll give our ideas. If we've done some preliminary stuff, we'll show them preliminary stuff. We may then have a follow-up meeting, or once we have the graphics to look at, like Casey's team has done something, they'll send us previews, which we then give notes on. And I go, I'm like, what the hell is this? It's not what we discussed. So one of the things, and this is kind of my thing, which is for graphics, I don't like graphics that don't tell a story, that don't make any sense, don't belong, look wrong for the, for the set. So I've come up with an abbreviation, the term VIPL, which describes the type of graphics that I like to have when I'm doing a show, which is visually interesting. So they have to be visually interesting, because a lot of times computer stuff is boring, but we're not here to show you something boring. So it's got to be visually interesting. So that's your VI. It's got to be plausible and logical. So is it plausible and logical for the story, for the person who's controlling it? If it's a ship control, if it's a bunch of stuff that's happening and that doesn't make any sense, that nobody could, control, or nobody would know what to do, there's no logic, and it's not plausible for where it's happening. You see sometimes a lot of stuff with moving boxes and lines and stuff, and you're like, what the hell is that? And where's the story, where's the drama? So I also want to make sure that when we're doing something that's specific to the story, that it's really dramatic, and that it's, and it tells the story clearly. It's, we use colors and specific fonts and other design things to help tell the audience a story, but it also has to be plausible. You can't have, letters that are 3 inches high and say, locked, or, something silly, because that's not how things work. You enhance things, you make things a little bigger than they need to be. But, sometimes you'll have directors who are asking for something that makes no sense. And I often will say, no, I've gotten a lot better, because I don't say, well, that's dumb. But I'll say, well, maybe we can do it like this, or let us show you this. And sometimes, I'm now at the point where I often will do a lot of stuff kind of because I think it's the right thing, even if the director doesn't. Because oftentimes I will get there, they'll see it and they'll go, oh, that looks great. And I also know that we've done a good job, because they want to do a close-up. If it's, whenever I get close-ups, inserts and close-ups, I'm like, okay, then we're telling the story, because then the editor has something to cut to that really helps tell the story. If it's just the actors talking about it and you're in a wide shot, it's like, okay, yeah, boring.
Well, there seemed to be, from what I can remember from Picard season 3, especially, there was a pretty fair amount of close-up shots, that stuff. So obviously, and we obviously know your work was great, that they were very happy with it.
Yeah, and there was some things, and this happens on Quantum Leap as well, where we don't have something in time. There's supposed to be a close-up of a photo of somebody in something that they haven't shot yet. Well, obviously we can't shoot that live on set, so it has to be done in post or done as an insert later. And yes, so I kind of sidelined your point, but yes, they did like our work, and then we are often able to even add to it if we need to. And Twisted Media works with post to kind of supplement, because, for example, one of the things in Picard, you saw people touching the consoles and you would see them interact. Well, they weren't really interactive consoles for the most part. So those little interactive bits were posted in, but most of the other elements that were there, and then just the little kind of interactive touch piece was kind of added for just effect, or to change, to make it look more true to what it should be. So that's that. Again, I have 1,000 different pictures and videos of things that I could go on for days, but what else do we want to cover here, if anything, or are we over our time? I don't know. What are we at, 7 hours?
7 hours. Well, if we're at 7 hours or 7 hours, Todd, do we at least get a certificate in the mail?
Yeah, exactly.
For say, hey, we know like 1/1000th of what goes on in this process. It's just absolutely wonderful. I've learned so much, and I have an even bigger appreciation, I think, than I did before. This wonderful stuff you share with us. I don't know about you, Chris, but I have learned in a massive amount.
Can we like we can certify this as like educate professional development and education
Yeah,
for
professional
this is
Yeah,
wonderful.
right. We can write this off.
Yeah.
Let's see. I didn't show you anything from the Enterprise. I don't know. I know you got stuff from Liz. I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to, if there's anything. Let me just look real quick if there's anything that I can add.
I did want to ask you a question, Todd.
Yeah.
Going back to some of your other work really quickly. How big of a difference, if any, from your vantage point, is it working on a science fiction show like Star Trek versus working on a comedy or another genre of movie or television show? Like I'm a big fan of the movie The Internship with Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, and I'm curious what the dynamics of working on a show like that versus Star Trek, or is there really no difference versus just the amount of work that has to be done?
Well, there is a difference in that if you're doing, a practical like the Internship where we were recreating Google, there's a certain level of design aesthetic that we have to match of theirs, and initially on that show, just it was a bit of a nightmare because we had to design stuff, then was supposed to go to Google for approval, then go to Fox Legal, and then come back to us. And you're like, no, we're shooting this tomorrow, guys. We don't, we got to the point where it was like, you know what, if there's a problem, you're going to just have to replace it later, because we could not deal with, there sometimes clearances. That's a big issue with a practical show, is the design clearance of, and I mean, we have that all the time with Quantum Leap. But on Star Trek, you're typically, nothing is real, so the clearances is not an issue. So that's one big thing. Ideally, often with a comedy, you're just kind of trying to create a feel for a real thing, versus sci-fi where you're creating something in the future or alien. And so again, there's different levels of believability. It's just a different design aesthetic. I mean, I enjoy sci-fi stuff a lot, and I've done, quite a few different spaceship films, or things with spaceships in them. I've also done Flight, where we, had to do a realistic, flight controls. But every show has its challenges of trying to, again, feel visually interesting and plausible and logical. So I try to bring that to everything. There's some that are just frustrating in that you have directors who either don't get it, or design or production designers, who are not really kind of smart enough to know what your things should be, and so they're asking you to do things that are dumb. But as far as, I don't know, I mean, I think I answered that question, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now for your, as you reflect upon like your portfolio and your body of work, is there, and maybe it's two categories, because I know the Star Trek is huge, but non Star Trek,
Sure.
Is there a project that you feel like just so personally proud of that you've worked on in your portfolio?
Well, there's quite a few. I mean, it's early on. I mean, the Net was a big one. Deep Impact, we did so much stuff in that show.
I really enjoyed Deep Impact a lot. I love that movie.
And that was such a hard film to do, and so many big sets. Some just right on top of each other. I mean, as far as schedule wise, I mean, that MSNBC, building an entirely functional working TV studio in a very short amount of time. That was very challenging. I mean, there's just a lot of films that I really enjoy, that I'm very proud of. And then, there's a lot that are just like, okay, there was a little of this and a little of that, nothing very exciting. But it's when I get to kind of reach out and do something greater. I mean, the internship, I got to do some really cool stuff. All those video walls that we did in that show. I mean, that was I did product placement from Barco, and they gave us those tiles for a month, and we built 3 different video walls for 3 different sets, from starting with the strip club, and then we did the video wall in the Google campus, the small one, when they're doing the training, and then the giant 25-foot one. And some stressful stories on that show with, because that was with Sean Levy, and Sean and I have, I've worked with Sean on Big Fat Liar, which was, his first feature film, and, did a bunch of other things with him. And then by the time he was doing that, he's such a big shot, and that he just didn't have patience for any trouble. And, it was a technically challenging show with all the time frame and everything like that. So it wasn't as fun as it could have been because, I was running a very slim crew on that, and I should have had more people and had a little more time and money. But overall, I think, the show, it looked really good, and it was a fun thing to get to do. And to actually, we actually went to the Google campus for a handful of days and got to shoot there. And so I was interacting with the Google guys, and the Google, it was like when we were on the Google campus, it was really cool. And our crew was really impressed. And then they were all impressed. The Google people were impressed with the film crew. And, and as far, I mean, obviously the Lost World is a great thing. And, I'd have to, there's different ones that over the years, people just really have really enjoyed and really liked. I mean, The Net was one, which I mentioned earlier, just because of where the place that it was in the early era of technology. And and I did articles and interviews for the 15 or the 20-year anniversary, and I think the 25-year anniversary or something, just because of kind of what some of the stuff that we predicted that actually happened. So like the picking your own airplane seat, and does the 3D, ordering a pizza with, where you could visually, pick your toppings and whatever. So
and that movie had Sandra Bullock in it, Chris.
And
So I mean,
Sandra Bullock
can't go
movie.
wrong with that, right? But
yes. Well, you can, because I did 2 Sandra Bullock movies that were not great, like Miss Congeniality 1 was good, Miss Congeniality 2 was not so good, and also All About Steve, which we had a lot of video stuff in, not so good of a movie. Proposal, I did the reshoots on, that was fun, but not a lot of work on
my
that.
wife really likes that movie, The Proposal.
Yeah, it's a cute film.
Yeah.
But I ended up working with that director, Anne, on the Barbra Streisand, Seth Rogen, what was My Mother's Curse was the original title, and was it The Mother-in-Law? No, it was I forget what it was called, but anyway. So yeah. So what else?
You've worked on some crazy projects. We love to have you back on again, because I think there's some even more stuff we'd love to dive into at some point, Todd. You've worked on so many incredible projects, so many incredible franchises, movies, TV shows. I mean, we could spend 7 hours just talking about Picard, let alone all the other movies. And you've got so many wonderful stories, and um, gosh, I've learned so much. I feel more knowledgeable, certainly, about what it is that you and your crews do and the amount of work that you guys put in to make the magic happen. And it's really stunning. And so thank you also for your work on Picard, especially because as a diehard Trekkie, it was special. I mean, the buzz, especially season 3, the buzz that season 3 got, and it gave us a reunion that I don't think we all realized we needed as Trek fans. And you helped bring that magic to life. So thank you so much for all that work you put in on it. It was really special.
Yes, and it was a great project to work on. You know, sometimes when you're in the midst of things, you're like, oh God. But that project, I mean, even in its stressful times, it's still, we knew that it was, special. And especially, season 3 was, and especially having done Nemesis, it was especially rewarding to have such a great outcome and a great storyline, to, I didn't, not the space babies thing, that one I didn't, the Nebula space baby thing, that one I kind of lost me on that, but everything else.
Yeah, it really was great. And I think hopefully it's a bit validating for you, Todd, knowing that, I mean, 50 years from now, people will still be talking about Star Trek and still be talking about Picard. And it's a legacy that will continue on well after all of us are long gone.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
not that it'll do us any good at that point, but
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, it is nice to have been a part of something that was so warmly received, because it often there are often films that we work on and we're like, oh, this is gonna be great, and then you get there and you're like, nobody watches, like the Steve Jobs movie. It was like, oh, this is gonna be great, and then and that's one I was really proud of all the work we did, and then you're like, nobody saw it. And Solaris, that was another one. It was like, looked really cool, and then the critics loved it, the audiences hated it. You're like, oh, okay. So yes, Picard is special because it means so much to so many people. And when I was at the convention, other than catching COVID, it was a great experience to meet all the fans and get all the great feedback from everyone. And that I feel very happy and proud to have been a part of that. And it's certainly paying off. Getting to do Quantum Leap was purely because of the Picard thing. So I'm very happy to have that. It's a great resume piece too, because as you've seen, just a small sample of what I showed you, just it's great to show people, go, we did this, we did this, we did this. So
yeah.
And thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, we can do another episode sometime, and we'll figure out another series of things to discuss, or other shows, and I can show clips from something else.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd. This is great. And for all of you watching or listening, if you've listened through the whole episode versus going to YouTube and watching the amazing visuals that Todd displayed, we really do appreciate it, as always. I'm sure if you have watched or listened to this, you have learned as much as we have. And I'll be honest with you, Todd, before Vegas last year, I had really little to no clue about all the stuff that went on into this, the stuff that you guys do. And now, from the panel that you were on with Liz and Dave Blass, and talking with you now, it gives such a deeper appreciation for what we see on screen and all the work that goes into what you see, because you watch it as a fan, right? And you don't really think about it. You're just watching the show, right? But when you get to talk to people like yourself and learn what it is that you do and all the work that goes into it, it just, how much more special that is, seeing all that work on screen and coming together.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you everybody so much, as always, for watching, listening all over the interwebs and the globe, Chris. We do appreciate it very much. And be sure to be tuned for more episodes coming soon. And thank you for watching as always, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.